Right, hello again, user Mitterriffit. Your video was somewhat hard to understand, so I'm just going to do the best to see if I have understood you properly. Okay, you ridiculed the scientists. You said they were coming up with jackass theories, which I thought was particularly awful because we're just sitting behind computer screens here. They're the ones building these, massive telescopes to look in to see the cosmic background radiation and the redshifting and the such for the evidence for the Big Bang. And this same equipment is what we're using, radio communication, to make these videos to one another and to use the internet in general. So that's just kind of offensive to say, for you to have said they come up with the jackass theories to support their pay packets. On the subject of speciation, you didn't seem to believe me when I said that a dog giving birth to a cat would be evidence for evolution. I was disputing your point about that, and yes, as Desertfall also pointed out to you, this is not how speciation works. Speciation is not a species giving birth to a new species. It's a species. If it's okay, let's just say a population gets cut off, so they cannot breed with each other anymore. They're going to continue giving birth to their own species, because species don't give birth to other species. They'll give birth to their own species. And when you replicate something, when you give birth to a baby or an offspring, it's going to be more or less a copy of your DNA, but with some mutations. Mutations just happen. Now, if enough of mutations occur, let's say between the two breeding lines, they're no longer breeding with each other, they're breeding separately. So changes are going to accrue. Now, if this happens enough, let's say the species meet back, each one would have had their DNA changed so much that they can no longer breed with one another. Their DNA is no longer compatible. This is known as genetic drift. That is speciation. And that is why Desertfall said if a dog gave birth to a cat, he put it, he said there'd be great evidence that there's a rather sick biologist out there. I forgot the term he used. I forgot the position he was referring to. Or it'd be excellent evidence for creationism. And indeed, if another species just gave birth to another species like that, the whole thing would have to be rewritten, because that's not what is believed right now. It's believed that small changes happen, and if they accrue enough, then the two species will no longer have a similar enough genes to be able to mix. You need to have enough gene flow going with each populace for these things to stay a species and to stay compatible, right? Dots exploding. I'll try and explain this again because I don't think you understood it, but I'll just try and explain it again. Yes, I concede that a small, dense thing, which could be referred to as a dot, some people refer to it as the primordial atom, others, I forgot the other term, there you go. But yes, this happened, something very small expanded, but this very small thing which expanded had time in it. This is before it was governed by the rules of time and space and gravity. This very thing became, once it expanded, time, space, and gravity. So it's just erroneous to suggest that we're going to see a dot in this construct blowing up and creating forests and buildings, because that's not what the Big Bang created. The Big Bang it set the laws of gravity. It converted from a very small, hot, dense thing, and it expanded, let off hydrogen and helium, and over time the galaxies separated far enough from each other, and then the energy cooled down to get to subatomic particles, and then planetary formation, and this is a very long process and such. That's what that dot exploding did. But may I repeat myself, that dot held the time, it held the fabric of time, space, and gravity in it, it would seem. And then when it expanded, these things became what they are now. So no, we shouldn't expect to see dots creating buildings in this construct of time and gravity. This is not what we should be expecting to see. Now, scientists are attempting to replicate this. With the Hadron Collider, they've smashed particles of lead together to try and create that expansion, and they've had to build a humongous machine to get, similar conditions. We can't have conditions within this construct. That's what I was trying to say. There cannot be conditions within this construct of time, space, and gravity where we would expect to see a replication. And the final point is, no, I did not make a jackass out of myself when I explained two different definitions of theory and then accepted that evolution and the Big Bang were correct. Because again, they're different definitions. A scientific theory, as I explained, is not just an idle speculation theory. Just look up what a theory means in science. And again, it would be absurd to suggest that, people always do this, they say, oh, evolution is just a theory. It's just as absurd as saying, oh, gravity is just a theory, even though myself, yourself, everything here, and all these inanimate objects are, being pulled down to the earth. So I was polite this time. Last video was kind of just a light ownership. This, I actually did attempt to explain something in very layman terms and with limited knowledge of the subject myself. So I encourage you. You seem to be willing to admit you're wrong and collect information, and that's a good thing. A quest for knowledge is great. So I'd focus on that, and my advice is don't put up videos saying debunking the Big Bang or debunking evolution. These are really sound facts of life. Do the research beforehand before making the video with such an ambitious task of debunking a sound theory. Okay, well, have a good night.